there's risk in making emotional decisions.
This is actually one of the biggest risks and probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they make important decisions, right? Where you make millions of decisions every single day, from when the alarm goes off, whether you're going to hit snooze or you're going to jump out of bed and start your day, right? There are all kinds of decisions that we make. But when it comes to these difficult decisions, it's usually because that decision is about change.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Empty Nest. I'm your host, Jody Silverman, speaker, mentor, and Chief Dare Officer at Moms Who Dare. Every Thursday, I'll share stories of midlife transformation, happiness tips, and dare you to see the opportunities waiting for you so that you can make this next chapter even better than the last. If you're ready to dare, I'm ready to dare with you. Let's get into today's episode.
All right, everybody. Today we're tackling a topic that resonates with so many of us: making tough and emotional decisions in midlife. Whether it's deciding you're switching careers, dealing with health concerns, contemplating a major move, or navigating relationship changes, midlife is often a time of significant transitions. These decisions can be incredibly daunting, filled with uncertainty and emotional weight. But fear not, you're not alone on this journey. In this episode, we'll be sharing practical tips and heartfelt advice on how to approach and navigate tough decisions with confidence and clarity. My guest today is Susan Guthrie, and she is here to share her wisdom from her experience being a top divorce attorney around what it has taught her about making important decisions. So if you're standing at a crossroads of a major life decision, feeling overwhelmed, just looking for guidance and support, you're in the right place today. Grab your coffee, tea, or maybe you might even need a cocktail for this one. But let's dive in. So Susan is a preeminent family law attorney and mediator with over 32 years of experience, hosts the top 1% worldwide podcast, the Divorce and Beyond podcast. Recognized as a top trainer in collaborative and mediation, Susan is a chair-elect of the ABA's section of dispute resolution and assumed a leadership position in this year in 2024. She specializes in aiding professionals in developing successful practices. Susan, welcome to Beyond Empty Nest.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm so excited to host you and for our audience to experience you because, besides all the decisions that come in life, period, in the midlife chapter with transitions, there's so many decisions. And you know what? One of them is divorce. Fortunately or unfortunately, it's about relationships. There's a lot of relationships. I actually had to come for a decision about, if you want to call it, divorce from a lifelong friendship.
Yeah.
And so I can only imagine. So I'm really excited about talking about decisions because it can leave us stuck. Like, we could have this really big decision and we can either bury it, not want to face it, or we can just get overwhelmed and not take any choice, not make any moves for it. So thank you for coming on to talk about, making important decisions and how to go about doing it.
Well, and this is actually one of my favorite topics to talk about because having been alongside people who are in the divorce process for now more than 32 years, all that process is one decision, one difficult decision after another. And so I've seen the consequences because you're 100% correct in what you say. There's usually two ways people come at difficult decisions. Ostrich syndrome, which is stick their head in the sand and put it off or punt, right, until another day, which has its own set of problems, or making those decisions on the fly without all of the proper thought and process, and then living to regret the decisions, which is also brings its own problems. So, some of the things that I've learned over my 32 years or so, I hope to be able to share just so that, when we make these decisions, we make them in a way that's intentional and thought out and, can lead to, as you and I both like to talk about, you're beyond empty nest, I am divorce and beyond. I want people to have a beautiful beyond, and I know you do too. So one of the things that can help you get there is making good decisions.
And I love that. And that was one of the reasons why I so badly wanted you to be one of our featured guests, is because we will not allow our audiences to stay stuck in that muck, in the indecision, in the sadness, in the quicksand of life and what is so. And then we want to help them move and get to their beyond. And I love how you say their beautiful beyond. I love that. So, okay, well, let's dive into one of the ways you said is making decisions on the fly. And there's risk in making emotional decisions.
This is actually one of the biggest risks and probably one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they make important decisions, right? Where you make millions of decisions every single day, from when the alarm goes off, whether you're going to hit snooze or you're going to jump out of bed and start your day, right? There are all kinds of decisions that we make. But when it comes to these difficult decisions, it's usually because that decision is about change. I have found that, if you really dive underneath any decision that you might call difficult, you're going to find that it's because it's going to effectuate a change in your life. And we just as humans are not big fans of change. Even when it's a change from bad to good, it's still, we're almost wired to stay stuck in bad because at least we know our bad and it might be better. So unfortunately, change brings about a lot of negative emotion. We were just talking making the risk of emotional decision making. So, certainly around divorce, but you deal with people going through a lot of changes that are midlife and beyond, what they're going to do, career changes, all these different things. They bring about a lot of emotions that are difficult. They bring about fear. They might bring up anger, which I think is just misdirected fear, right?
Yes.
There's a whole theory and a lot of writing on that topic. Sadness that something is over, and certainly in my case, it's the marriage or the relationship is over. In your case, you're talking to people who a stage in life might be over. And although there's many exciting things in the beyond, it's very hard to see that. The problem with making your decisions immediately in that space is that when you make the decisions based upon those negative emotions, you're almost guaranteed to make choices or make decisions that will either keep you stuck, right? Like, I'm not going to make any changes now, or that perpetuate those negative emotions. You're not making those decisions from the positive state of emotion. Right. So, I always counsel people, and the people that I have seen make the best choices are people who find ways to deal with the emotions before they make the decisions.
Yep. I love that. I love that. There's a technique that I learned from a woman all around boundaries. And it's first of all, I call it taking a beat. Everyone says take a pause. You're saying take a beat.
Yes.
And her technique, you just totally brought it to my awareness here, is recognizing, say, something in me feels angry, something in me feels scared, something. And once you recognize that, it puts a little distance between you and that emotion. So you don't become that emotion. And then you can then look at it and figure out how to navigate through it. So
Oh, so important. And I love, recognizing that. You and I have had conversations around awareness. Mm-hmm. And this is really being aware that you're feeling all these emotions. And I call it giving yourself the grace of space. You say, take a beat. I say, give yourself the grace of space, because if you're recognizing that emotion, and that can be hard, right? We need to take a deep breath just to, why am I resisting making this decision? Why have I been putting it off? Those are good signs, right? There are always signs around the emotional content. But just recognizing the emotions is not enough. Once you've been able to take the beat, give yourself the grace of space. You also need coping mechanisms to deal with that emotional content, to give yourself the understanding that you're feeling that, but know how to then be able to move beyond it. And in fact, you shared a wonderful exercise where you were recently on Divorce and Beyond on my podcast, and you shared an exercise for sort of turning those thoughts around. I called it the ... exercise, because it was like taking the beginning of a sentence and changing the end of it. Maybe you could share that on this episode.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. First of all, I like how you're good at coming up with names for things. I love it. Simple names. So the ... exercise is recognize when you're in, I call it the blame, shame, and complain game, which does lead to reaction in an emotional place. So it's asking yourself 3 questions, bring awareness. So something I blame myself for is ... Something I complain about is ... And a way I shame myself is ... And then once you have that written down, you're now looking at it, you've calmed down hopefully a little bit. And now you can flip it and say, well, if I were a little bit kinder to myself, I say this is about taking responsibility for happiness. But if you want to talk about it where you want to be able to make a better decision, where, if I were to be a little more kinder to myself about this, if I were to approach this from a calmer emotional state, I would ...
Yeah. I see. And I love the ... because there's to me represents possibility. It represents opportunity, right? And I always say to my listeners, divorce is not a shame. Divorce is not a stigma. Divorce is not the worst thing that ever happened to you. Divorce is an opportunity. And so are your difficult decisions. So in this case, taking the ... exercise might be recognizing, I feel anger over being forced to move or forced to find a new job, or whatever the thing is that you're having to make these decisions about. And then recognizing what those difficult emotions around that are. I am afraid. I feel afraid about having to go back out into the workforce, or having to find a way to fill, or not having the same amount of insight into my child's life. I know a lot of my friends who are having, empty nest syndrome at the moment are really struggling with the fact that their child is now gone and they just don't know what they're doing all day. Are they safe? Are they eating well? Are they studying? Are they, whatever those things are that they might need to be doing. So same thing with the ... I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling frustrated, whatever those things might be. And then ... into what's the opportunity here? What am I afraid of? And what might this look like if I look at this decision as an opportunity to bring about positive change for my life?
Yeah, I love that. And then by using your words, giving yourself the grace of space, recognizing that you're in a heightened emotional state, grace of space can allow you to move to a second way of making decisions that you share, which is strategic decision making. Because you can't strategize, you can't be intentional if you're in an emotional state.
Yeah, absolutely right. We know that about strong emotion. We know that, especially the negative emotions we've been talking about, we know that the neuroscience of the brain biology is that our stress hormones turn off our brains, right? They literally make it that you can't think rationally. So you can't be strategic. So your grace of space, which is probably the most important factor here, also gives you breathing room. And it also gives you that opportunity to calm those neural pathways down, get a little space in there, but also to be strategic about how you're going to make your decision. And as we're talking about making decisions, are you making a decision for yourself, or is it a decision that involves others? Because that's, another part of this strategy. There's, and just the decision-making process. Very often when we are going into this decision-making process, we fail to look at whether or not this is a me decision or is it an us decision. And many of us, yeah, well, and it becomes a very central part about this, because if it's a me decision, it's a conversation with yourself and it's making the decisions based upon the beyond you want to see. But if it's an us decision that needs to be made, you really can hamper that conversation you need to have with the other part of us, whoever that might be, your family, your spouse, your significant other, your friend, your, whatever that might be, the world at large. If you are coming at that from that perspective of, well, I've made up my mind about what I want, and therefore that is what must be. And so one of the things you do have to look at while you're giving yourself that grace of space is it a me decision? Is it an us decision? And then you want to be strategic about, if it's an us decision, how you're going to have that conversation. And one of the most important strategies is not to come in with, it has to be this way. I've made up my mind and it will be what I want. Because how well do you respond when someone tells you this is what we're going to do?
And even if it's a good idea, yeah, no, I'm not admitting to it. So let's talk directly into your expertise, because I know that there's women in our audience either contemplating divorce or maybe even in it, and maybe they're not getting the best of advice from, and with all your experience in mediation, how can being really prepared and using strategy behind being strategic in your decision making, how can that really turn the tide? Should like paint the picture for that? Well, and I think that's I don't want to skip over what you just said about you need to come in with an expectation, but being open that it might not be exactly the way you have it in mind.
Yeah, and that's really the key to the whole thing. When you get to, and if we're speaking directly to people who are negotiating or who are working toward a mutual solution, right, or a mutual conclusion, which is what divorce is, people tend to look at major decisions that are us decisions as a win or lose. It's either going to be my way or your way. If we get my way, I win. If it's your way, I lose. And that very much sums up how people approach
that's ego.
Divorce.
It's all ego.
Yeah. But that is, let me tell you, 30 plus years of being a divorce attorney, that is how people see divorce negotiations.
Okay.
And the key to a successful negotiation in a divorce is actually to look at the decision-making process as a mutually beneficial exploration of options, as opposed to positions. So that's sort of a key. And you mentioned earlier, I'm a divorce attorney, but I'm also a mediator. And mediators, the difference between a divorce attorney litigation approach and a mediative approach is divorce attorneys are looking very much about the win-loss, right? They want to get as much of what their client wants, and that's how you win. A mediator is trying to help the two people look at all of their options and find ways to choose the ones that get both of them as much of what they each want, so they both win as much as possible, right? It's like the third solution, we call it. And so what stops people from getting to that type of a conclusion with as many wins as possible for both of them is when people get stuck in a position. It has to be this way. And it's a very human way to think. I'll give you an example that we see often in family law. I have to keep the house. I must have the house. That is a very positional statement. And I can hear people out there, the brakes are squealing, right? Where they're going, yeah, but I have to keep the house. That's absolutely imperative. There are a variety of different ways to come and look at keeping the house. Well, what does that actually look like? Do you have to keep the house for 100 years? Or could you keep the house for a certain number of years until, say, your children graduate from high school? There's a really popular one. Well, how does that, so what are the options around keeping the house? Can you jointly own the house? Can you own the house and pay the bills by renting out one of the rooms? Can you start brainstorming the options as opposed to looking at it as I must keep the house? That is the only option. And it's when you are able to look at more than just that one narrow position and look at all the different options of what might get you as much of what you want as possible. What is it you get by keeping the house? That is the first question I tell people. So if you have a position that's really important to you, first thing to do, sit down and what is it that you benefit by getting that thing?
I love
So
that. That's a good question. That's like yes, because oh my God, you just like, my mind is going here a mile a minute, and then how this can translate to so many um conflicts. It can avoid so much conflict. And I like how you pointed out, because attorneys are not going to say that to you. Because the attorney
I'm one of them. And so, that was not what our
is
training was. You've got to understand, attorneys have a role, and we go to law school and have beaten into our heads to think like an attorney. Well, how you think like an attorney is take the law, take the facts, and find a way to put them together that gets your client as much of what they want as possible. That's what being a lawyer is, advocating for your client by using the law and the facts to get them that. And it's a very specific skill set. It's very needed in this world in certain instances. I would not say restructuring your family is probably one of those areas. There are many better ways to do it. And the really transformational exercise here that we just talked about, and I've seen this over and over in mediation, so I really recommend people try this. When you are stuck on a certain thing, as we just said, and we'll use the house thing, I have to keep the house. Write down all the things you get if you get to keep the house. I get security. I get the convenience of not having to move. I get the financial security of knowing that I won't have to go get a mortgage that's 8% instead of 3%, right? That's a current issue that people are facing. Write down, sit down and exhaust yourself writing down all those positive things that you're going to get out of that. And then start looking for options that will get you as many of those things as possible. And in that way, that's where you start finding the ways where you can negotiate with your other person to try and get as many of those things as possible. Because it's kind of like the happiness conversation that you and I had, right? We have people talking all the time about wanting to be happy, but not really knowing in their own minds what that means to them, what that looks like. So it's the same thing with decisions. You know what you want out of the decision often, or a negotiation, but you don't know what that really looks like. And that's what it is to look underneath your position and look at your interests.
That's the dare for the show right there. The dare to the show is, what are all the things you get by you wanting to keep your house, whatever. And we'll put it in quotes because that translates to other decisions. It might not be about a divorce for you, but it's getting to your why. It's getting to the real core as to why it matters so much to you. Why, and taking the ego out of it, which is so hard to do when you're in the throes of an emotional, going back to the first thing, check in on your emotions and put distance, grace, and space for yourself between your emotion before you react, so that you can sit down and look at it in a strategic way. It all just flowed and came together. You just put a whole puzzle together for me.
Well, and it's an interesting thing because honestly, I'll tell you, it's not what they trained us to do in law school. I mentioned what that was all about. And it wasn't really until I became a mediator and a collaborative attorney, which is a different approach to family law that works very much from that cooperative, let's problem solve versus go with zero sum, win and loss approach. And it was when I started to make that change in my career that I started to really see how these different approaches to problem solving, to decision making, to negotiation, all of these conversations, difficult conversations we might have in life, all of these things fare much better when we come at them from a cooperative and collaborative approach, as opposed to the it's all my way or the highway approach.
So I know this is probably a whole nother 35-minute episode. I know I'm opening up Pandora's box with this question. So, because this is, you're talking about the role of mediation and collaborative approaches is what all this get into. So what do you say to the woman who's listening, who's in the throes of it, and she shifts to this collaborative approach, she does the work, and yet her partner just won't budge, is all about, I want what I want. And is there a way, how do you move it? How do you move it? If you're not in mediation and it's just like when somebody says to me, well, I'm doing this personal growth work, but nobody else in my family is. So how do I do that?
Well, there are a lot of different steps and say
That's
you
another
caught
episode.
me. No, I would have said, get yourself a mediator because that's our skill set is to
Yes.
help people explore. But one of our tools, a couple of our tools that might be helpful. The first one is radical curiosity. You already mentioned it. One of a mediator's best skills is honestly to just say, tell me more. Tell me more about what it is, why you want to sell the house. What are the benefits of selling the house that are so appealing to you that this is your position? This is what you say you want. Is it financial security? Is it getting your, get the person to by asking the right questions, right? By being curious. And so open-ended questions tend to be the best questions. Things like, tell me more, not, well, that's not fair, but I really want to keep, the way that we generally have these conversations is not radical curiosity. And so you will find, one thing we know about people, right? You and I probably talking with people all the time. People like to talk about themselves. People like to be asked questions. People like to explore more. So I think you will find that if you are curious about what lies underneath, you will be able to, with the right questions, start to elicit that. And the other aspect of this is to approach the conversation as a mutual problem-solving exploration.
I like that.
As opposed to I want what I want and you what you want, and I'm here to talk you out of what you want. Because that's the other thing. When you're brainstorming, when you're being curious, when you are option generating, you are actually starting to turn the focus of that conversation on problem solving, and it's mutual problem solving. Well, so what I'm hearing from you is that it's really important that you have some financial security and a lump sum of cash as you move through to your life beyond the divorce. So maybe we could explore some ways that we can free up some cash for you. Would that be something that was attractive to you? And as we try to work toward and negotiate a settlement here or make our decisions together, I wonder what some ways we might do that might be, right? And having that conversation, you just shifted the entire, I want to sell the house, I want to keep the house, from positions to problem solving exploration.
A conversation. Yeah, I love that. Now, is it, I'm just curious, my own personal curiosity here before we wrap this up is it common for a couple getting a divorce for one of them to come in with a mediator and the other one to have an attorney?
So a mediation is a process that is mutually agreed upon by the parties, right?
Okay,
And so the mediator doesn't work with just one or the other. The mediator is a neutral. Doesn't there to support both of them. Not, I wouldn't say equally, but support both of them in a way, because sometimes one party needs a little more support than the other, or they need different kinds of support. But the mediator's role is to support them in having the conversations and to facilitate the difficult conversations and issues that they need to have with, sometimes it's a little hard to have those, just the two of you that are in that process. You can have attorneys either in the room, on the screen, or available to you outside of the process. It's a very malleable process, so it can be curated to whatever that couple needs.
Well,
but
that
the
was a
key
good
is, changing how you come at it. And so if it is and really honestly, that open-ended question and that diving beneath to interest goes back to, if it's a you decision that needs to be made, those are all questions that you need to ask yourself before you make the decision. Be curious about what it is that's motivating you in that moment, and what the outcome of that decision, what is it that you really want to be coming out of it? And if it's a decision that's an us decision, remember that it's a mutual conversation.
I love that. All right. Well, there's your dare. Your dare is to get if there's a decision that you are looking to make, and whether it's a divorce or really, I'm so many thoughts are coming on an episode on how to apply this directly to navigating life with your adult children while they're far away. And if, think about the keeping your house. I'm doing my quote marks for those of you not looking at the video, but keep in using that as your example, apply it to the decision you're making and get curious about it. Why does it matter so much to you? What do you gain from that? What is your why behind wanting that so badly in your position that it has to be that? And get clear on that and go from there.
Yeah, it's really transformational. The minute you start looking underneath to what you gain if you were to get what you say you want,
That's it.
that's when you really start to see how you might find other ways to get what you want besides the just very linear path that you're seeing right now. And when you have options, you have choices. And when you have choices, you are better able to make good decisions.
Yeah, and you have a better place of negotiating. I mean, you really do. You come from a better place. I love this. Thank you so much, Susan, for this amazing conversation. So we did mention well, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to get more support. I mean, I know where, but we'll put it in the show notes, but let them know.
Absolutely. The podcast is easy to find. It's on all, major podcast outlets, but Divorce and Beyond, but they can also go to divorceandbeyondpod.com. And we have all kinds of downloadables there and links to all the books and resources that are different. I've got something, like 250, 300 episodes that they can get to there. We've also broken them down into categories. So if what you're facing are financial issues in your divorce, we have a page on financial issues and episodes, divorcing a high conflict personality, you name the topic, we've got an episode on it. And really my entire goal of having this show is to help people get through this difficult time, because I know I've been through it with many, many, many people and myself, and to get that to that beautiful beyond that you and I have been talking about.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much. So yes, absolutely. Click the links below, embark on the dare. It's a great dare that you can apply in any area of your life. And, what was it for you? The mission and the goal of mine from hosting these amazing guests like Susan and all of our guests that we've had is for you to just have one takeaway, just one thing Susan said today that turned the light bulb on for you, or that created a shift inside of you or a stirring inside of you. What was it? Let us know. Send me a message, leave a comment. Go to social media. We're both there. You can find us. We want to hear from you. It matters to us that you walk away with something that really does support you in making your midlife chapter and your life beyond it a beautiful beyond. And remember that next week, we'll be back with a brand new episode of Beyond Empty Nest. And as I always say, dare on. Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Empty Nest. For detailed show notes and more information, be sure to visit jodysilverman.com. Have you heard of the Double Dares? Well, we're a community of moms and midlife women blending virtual and in-person interactions for connection, support, and exciting experiences. From Mommy and Me classes to soccer sidelines, moms have always found strength in community. And as we navigate the empty nest and other midlife transitions, having that go-to safe space and other women to lean on is a must. Ladies, this is not the chapter to do it alone. Our drama-free group echoes the sentiment of the Cheers theme song, a place where everybody knows your name and our troubles are all the same. If you've been seeking connection and have a desire to figure out who you are and what your purpose is now, then Moms Who Double Dare is the perfect fit for you. Only through the link in our show notes below can you explore and enjoy the first month at half off. Plus, with no contracts, there's zero risk involved. Join us today and get started on your journey of self-discovery, surrounded by new friends who understand and get you. You've sent your kids off to brave new experiences, meet new people, and discover who they get to be. Now, it's your turn. It's your turn to embrace this new adventure. If you're ready to dare on, I'm here to lead the way. Let's embark on this exciting journey together. Click the link below, and as I always say, dare on.